Alright, how many cards have I reviewed so far? And how many cards do I have left to review? Oh boy, I almost forgot how difficult reveal season was. Time for some faster reviews. Crystal Power. Each of these effects alone would be on the border between Sadly Lacking and Fun for the Arena. Being able to choose between them makes this pretty good. Play depends on if Druid's new archetype can work. Dreamway Guardians. It's Firefly with a tiny amount of lifesteal that you can't play turn 1. Fun for the Arena probably won't see play. Marked Shot. Actually not a bad control piece, so it's pretty good. But it's for Hunter, so it'll only maybe work. Wait, no, Zul'jin, it'll definitely work. Shimmerfly. Spell Focus value card. Pretty good. Zul'jin support. Might see play. Magic Trick. Ain't that a perfectly balanced Discover. Fun for the Arena probably won't see play, though maybe Miracle Mage will become a thing. Hench-clan Hag. You like amalgams? Now you have tiny ones. Probably won't see play. Vendetta. Observe the mild power creep over cards like Wing Blast. Deck defining, might see play. Duel. I think I can give this card the ranking of stupid unless it isn't, and literally no one will raise an eyebrow. Probably won't see play. Shadowy Figure. This is the token example of a decent if decent card since it's only good if you're smart in using death rattles. As such, might see play. Mana Cyclone. This is the token example of a decent if decent card since it's only good if you're smart and using spells. As such, might see play. Barista Lynchin. This is a token example of a decent if decent card, etc, battlecry minions, etc, etc. Evil Conscriptor. Neat if a little weak. Probably won't see play unless Tempo Death Rattle Priest takes off. Evil Genius. Egg Zulok. That is all. Eager Underling. Egg Zulok. That is all. Underbelly Fence. This card is a single 1-drop away from being overpowered. I'll even bump it from strong to deck defining. Might see play. Walking Fountain. About time we got some Rush Wind Fury synergy. It's a jack of many trades and quite expensive, but could probably work regardless. Aranasi Broodmother. Weird. Not good, sad to say, but weird. Dimensional Ripper. Even in the best case scenario, that's a 10 mana card. The Boom Reaver. Even in the best case scenario, that's a 10 mana card. But at least there's Rush. And lastly, Commander Risa. Strong in the right deck because it's strong if it's in the right deck. We'll probably see play given some of the other cards we've seen so far. And that's it for cards I can review in 2 sentences or less, that haven't come out in the last 6 hours. So time for some normal length reviews. First up, we have Ray of Frost. 1 mana mage spell, twin spell, freeze a minion. If it's already frozen, deal 2 damage instead. Well, let's start with the good news. Low cost twin spell, yay! Now on to the bad news. This card is extremely weak. I've covered this with other cards in the past, but let's break it down now. Freezing a minion is a form of anti-tempo that incentivizes ignoring the minion afterwards. Therefore, damaging a frozen minion is something a player rarely wants to do, and that's pretty much what this card does. Consider a card quite similar to this, Ice Lance. You might think, but Ice Lance went to the Hall of Fame, so it must be good. However, the reason that the card was put away was because of its power when used aggressively, not because of minion damage. It's sad because I really want this card to work. I want a nice 1 mana twin spell card that can be as fair and strong as Firefly. But unfortunately, this card isn't it. Sadly Lacking probably won't see play. Keep an eye out for a Miracle Freeze deck though. Next up is Desperate Measures. 1 mana paladin spell, twin spell, cast a random paladin secret. Now this is much better. A random paladin secret for 1 seems on the surface perfectly balanced, but the weakness is the possibility that the secret doesn't synergize with the rest of the deck. However, a remarkable majority of paladin secrets are meant to keep minions the player already has on the field alive, and the remaining ones aren't the worst to get at random. With the exception of Ivor and I guess. So for the most part, no problem. However, the real fun with this card is that, since it's a random secret, the opponent will need to test for all the secrets and try to avoid the more dangerous ones. That is just awesome, in my personal opinion. Without Twin Spell, this card would be sadly lacking due to the lack of synergies. With Twin Spell, however, it gets thrust all the way up to pretty good. If that confuses you, may I remind you that Firefly was a 1 mana 1/2 without its additional use. It seems pretty clear that secret synergies are surging with this expansion, and given how Secret Paladin saw brief play in Rastakhan and won't be overshadowed by Odd Paladin anymore, I'll give this certain odds for the meta. This is the second time I've given higher ratings than the average Hearthstoner, so bear that in mind before you go crafting golden copies of this card. Up next is Call to Adventure. 3 mana paladin spell, draw the lowest cost minion from your deck, give it +2/+2. Interesting to say the least. Buffs are best done to low cost minions since the buff is made easier to exploit. However, this buff is small enough that even that doesn't do. Stone Tusk Boar becomes a 4 mana 3/3, which isn't as strong as certain other charge cards. But that's just an examination of power. This card does one other important thing known as Tutoring. A term stolen from Magic the Gathering, Tutoring refers to drawing a specific card from the deck by constructing the deck appropriately. Does that make this card good? Sometimes? The truth of the matter is that this card will only ever be used in a very particular combo deck, and it will probably be the weakest link in said deck. Though for what it's worth, I really do love the flavor of this card. Moving on, we have Bronze Herald. 3 mana 3/2 Paladin Dragon, Death Rattle, add 2 4/4 dragons to your hand. The dragons cost 4 mana. Alright, this card is almost decent tempo that gets killed very easily, and in exchange for that easy death, its user gets 2 cards that are a little on the weak side. That's fairly balanced actually. What worries me about this card is that it's a little slow, which leaves the Dragon Paladin deck it obviously fits into exposed to aggro. But other cards at Paladin's disposal counter that, so I suppose I don't need to worry. Right? Well, in the end this card is pretty good, just make sure that when you use it, you have enough tools to counter the opponent's efforts to murder you. To that end, its playability is entirely dependent on how viable Dragon Paladin is. So, let's look more into that. Next up is Dragon Speaker. 5 mana 3/5 Paladin minion, Battle Cry, give all dragons in your hand +3/+3. Blizzard! How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Handbuffing doesn't work! Penniless, we talked before about how Soul Infusion, handbuffing doesn't work! Alright, here's the deal with handbuffing. It works best when it's tied to weak minions, because the buff in stats leads to the greatest rise in power. Historically, the juxtaposition of building an aggressive board and a wide hand made handbuffing impractical. To put it in color theory terms, the mechanic demands value in exchange for high tempo. 2 opposite colors, which means the deck is hard to put together in regards to synergies. In this case, it's still impractical, with the added benefit that dragons generally aren't cheap and therefore the buff is even harder to use. But this is particularly strong to make up for it. A single dragon makes this a 5 mana 6/8. More dragons and those numbers get higher. This overall makes the card stupid unless it isn't, since it can only be used in a tempo value dragon deck. I highly doubt it'll see play, but I'll still give it slight odds on that front. Onwards we have Nozari, 10 mana 4/12 legendary paladin dragon, Battlecry, restore both heroes to full health. Well, isn't that interesting? I initially wrote this card off as being about as clunky as Tree of Life. However, that blatantly disregarded how this card also has a 4/12 body. A minion with a body like this usually has a power effect tied to it, which makes it a prime target for hard removal. But with this, who cares? If Nozari is removed, the hero is still healed. An effect this grand is not something to ignore. Forbidden Healing was another card like this that actually managed to see play after all. This card is quite similar in all of the best ways. I was tempted to give this a crafted golden, but given that it needs to be played in a control deck, I'll instead say it's amazing if used right. Healing this extreme will likely be a mainstay in Paladin for years to come. For now, it'll probably see play. I'll note that it does compete with Shirvala in regards to healing, but also synergizes with the Call a lot. I don't know, but it looks like Control Paladin will be in a good place this expansion. Next up is Crystal Song Portal, 2 mana druid spell, discover a druid minion. If your hand has no minions, keep all 3. Well, it's quite clear how this is used. Step 1, get no minions in your hand. Step 2, play this. That simply leaves the questions, how difficult is step 1 and how powerful is step 2? That obviously depends on the deck, but here's the thing. The smaller the player's hand, the less likely there are minions in it. On top of this, any minions the player does have should be cheap, so that they can be played out right before playing this. It looks like with all that considered, we're looking at a faster paced druid utilizing this card. With that prerequisite, let's look at this card's output, 3 random minions. The problem here is that these minions could be, well, anything, from the new legendary to Dusk Fallen Aviana. Cheap or expensive, it doesn't matter. but odds are the cards will still provide tempo and board, which means this card provides support where necessary. I'll call this deck defining, and it might see play if Druid can put together a fast deck that can make it to the endgame without consequence. Wait a minute. The Forest Day would be the perfect capstone for a deck like that. Useless as a traditional mid-range card certainly, but a final burst in power at the endgame with another burst following it? I might have to correct the rating I gave that card. Nearly done, we have Lucent Bark. 8 mana 4/8 Druid Legendary, Taunt, Death Rattle, go dormant. Restore 5 health to awaken this minion. Let's start with one important detail. Polymorph, Hex, and Mind Control shut this down hard. Ignoring those 3, this card has the board presence and anti-aggro of a very good 6 mana card, with the benefit of being able to come back. Of course, it is mildly challenging to get a lot of healing into a deck, but it's still capable of being pulled off. However, since it counters deck types that usually conclude their strategy before turn 8, I'm deciding to revoke this from being deck defining. Instead, I'll say strong in the right deck. Given those extreme weaknesses we mentioned earlier, it seems only fair. Sorry, Lucent. Maybe meta, as with most of these unfamiliar cards. And finally, we have Archmage Vargoth. 4 mana 2/6 neutral legendary, at the end of your turn, cast a spell you cast this turn, with random targets. Oh dear, is this somewhat terrifying. Clearly this card doesn't fit into a deck that just puts in whatever spells they desire. A bit more craftiness is necessary. To that end, this minion provides significant results if used correctly. Just to consider a few options: Ferocious Howl, Dire Frenzy, Cinder Storm, Vivid Nightmare, Power Word Replicate, Necrium Vial, Academic Espionage, Unleash the Beast, Blizzard, Flame Strike, Mind Control, and many more we'll see in the future. And even if that plan doesn't work, this is still a 2/6 minion, far from disposable stats. With a worst case scenario that isn't too bad and several best case scenarios that are just atrociously strong, this card has earned an amazing if used right. If you think you have a strategy for this card, go forth and give it your best shot.